Conservatives are the first to say, don't politicize death. But here's the irony. Charlie Kirk's death is political, by definition. He was a political figure, and he was killed in an act of political violence. There's no way around it. His murder is political, period. And yet, these are the same voices that have always politicized the deaths of others when it suited them. When George Floyd was murdered, they said he was a criminal. When Breonna Taylor was killed, they blamed her associations. Trayvon Martin was a child, and still, they painted him as dangerous. School shootings, if the shooter is trans, suddenly the entire trans community is on trial. And Charlie Kirk himself, his last tweet was about a Ukrainian nationalist woman who was murdered. He turned her death into a political talking point. They've never hesitated to politicize death when it was convenient. But now that one of their own has been taken out, suddenly we're told, don't politicize. The double standard is glaring. And here's where it gets dangerous. Instead of sitting with the uncomfortable truth that this shooter came from a conservative family raised by a sheriff father, radicalized in part by edgelord troll culture, they latched on to one unverified but sensational detail, the alleged trans partner. Even though that partner cooperated with law enforcement, even though they weren't involved in the crime, conservatives saw an opportunity. They politicized that one detail to smear the entire LGBTQ community. Because martyrdom always needs a villain. And when the facts don't provide one, you create one. That's how scapegoating works. And that scapegoating doesn't just live online. It fuels harassment, discrimination, and violence against trans people who already face disproportionate hate crimes. And let's talk about freedom of speech for a second. These are the same people who say they'll die on a hill for the First Amendment, that no opinion should ever be censored. Yet, after Charlie Kirk's death, we've seen conservative voices and even government agencies talking about revoking passports or even citizenship for people based on their comments, their tweets, their opinions about Charlie Kirk. Think about that hypocrisy. The man who claimed to be a champion of free speech is now being used as a reason to punish speech. When the left mourns their martyrs, conservatives, they call it dangerous. But when it's their martyr, suddenly freedom of speech doesn't apply. For marginalized communities, political violence is tragically common. Victims of police shootings, hate crimes, state-sanctioned violence, it's normalized to the point where grief is expected. But for conservatives, this is brand new. They aren't used to being in the victim role, and that's why their reaction looks like denial, anger, and hypocrisy all rolled into one. They don't know how to process it, except by scapegoating and spinning. So let's be clear. Conservatives have always politicized death when it benefited them. What's different now is that one of their own, a man who made a career out of politicizing other people's tragedies, has himself become a victim of political violence. And instead of facing that reality, they've chosen to weaponize the pain by scapegoating a marginalized community and even threatening to punish speech. That's not justice. That's not truth. That's fear and power, feeding off tragedy the way it always has in America.